Shri Prabhupada ki Jai, Panchatattva ki, Shri Radha Gokulananda ki, Jai Jai Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shri Gaur Nitai ki. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. So if you just repeat after me for the invocation prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, thank you. So reading from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, which is entitled The Conclusion, the Perfection of Renunciation. And the verse that we're reading today is 61. So usually we do call and response for the Sanskrit, but I'm conscious that not many of you will probably have the Bhagavad Gita. So does anybody have an online version or anything? If not, okay, that's fine. So I'll just read the Sanskrit, and then if you can just try and repeat after me just once, then yeah, that would be nice. So I'll read the whole lines out first, and then read it one at a time. Ishvara sarva bhutanam riddeshe ruchuntishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantarudhani mayaya. So if you repeat word by word. Ishvara, the Supreme Lord. Sarva bhutanam, of all living entities. Riddeshe, in the location of the heart. Arjuna, O Arjuna. Tishtati, resides. Brahmayan, causing to travel. Sarva bhutani, all living entities. Yantra, on a machine. Arudhani, being placed. Mayaya, under the spell of material energy. So the English translation. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. So repeat after me again. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. Right, so purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Arjuna was not the supreme knower, and his decision to fight or not to fight was confined to his limited discretion. Lord Krishna instructed that the individual is not all in all. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, or He Himself, Krishna, as the localized Supersoul, sits in the heart, directing the living beings. After changing bodies, the living entity forgets his past deeds, but the Supersoul, as the knower of the past, present, and future, remains the witness of all his activities. Therefore, all the activities of living entities are directed by the Supersoul. The living entity gets what he deserves and is carried by the material body, which is created in the material energy, under the direction of the Supersoul. As soon as a living entity is placed in a particular type of body, he has to work under the spell of that bodily situation. A person seated in a high-speed motor car goes faster than one seated in a slower car. Though the living entities, the drivers may be the same. Similarly, by the order of the Supreme Soul, material nature fashions a particular type of body to a particular type of living entity so that he may work according to his past desires. The living entity is not independent. One should not think himself independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The individual is always under the Lord's control. Therefore, one's duty is to surrender, and that is the injunction of the next verse. So just to recite Mangalacharan, which is invocation prayers before we start discussing the verse. Om Jnanatimarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadameyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamascha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganurugnatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadhavaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamascha He Krishna Kurana Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubheva cha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha namo vishnupadaya krishnaprishtaya bhutale shrimate bhaktivedanta swami nityanamane namaste saraswati deve gaurvani pracharine nirvishesha shunyavadi pashtatya deshatarine jai shri krishna chaitanya prabhu nityananda shri advaita gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Ki Jai. So just read the translation out one more time before we start going into the verse. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. So thank you everyone for joining today. It's nice to have an audience to bounce off of, and we can all penetrate the Bhagavad Gita together. So before we start discussing this verse specifically, since we're almost at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, so you can just see here, before I do that, almost at the end, right? So I think it would be nice just to understand what's been going on in the Bhagavad Gita. And I'll request your help for that as well, if that's okay. So can anybody just share what's the context behind the Bhagavad Gita? Like, why was it spoken? And who was it spoken by? During the Battle of Kurukshetra. So moments before a war, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna and giving all this transcendental knowledge, right? But let's think about that for a second. Moments before a war, they're having a little discussion, and discussion spans 700 verses, and this is almost like a 1,000-page book. It's described that they spent about 45 or 50 minutes. I don't know about you, but I don't know if anybody would have time to discuss for almost an hour just before a war. But they still did that. So there has to be something in the Bhagavad Gita, something in that discussion that is necessary to learn and understand. Okay, so that's the background. So what was being discussed in the Bhagavad Gita? There are 5 main topics that are described. Can anybody give one? Prabhu.
Fight against brothers, whether Arjuna would want to do it, but Krishna persuaded him to fight for the sake of
Yeah, so Prabhu was saying that one of the reasons for discussing the Bhagavad Gita was because Arjuna was perplexed about whether or not to fight his own brothers, which were on the other side, his own cousins. But there are many different topics. Yeah?
One was dharma, one was karma, the third one was righteousness, path of devotion. Maybe you mentioned.
Okay. So Prabhupada was talking about there being different paths to be different types of paths being described. For example, like bhakti yoga or karma yoga or jnana yoga. Yep. So many different topics were discussed, and this chapter 18, the conclusion, the perfection of renunciation, is right at the end of the book. If we think about any book that we've read, what comes at the end? It's a conclusion, it's a summary of everything that's been discussed, and specifically the main points, right? So when we go through chapter 18, we see that at the start, what's being described is things about renunciation, the difference between tyag, which is giving up the results of the activities, and then there's sannyas, which is another type of renunciation, which is giving up activity altogether. And then going further on, Krishna describes the three modes of nature. All of us are affected by these three modes of nature. They're ignorance, passion, and goodness. Every activity, every thought, every plan, everything that we do is affected by these three things. Somebody in the mode of ignorance is more inclined towards something which is lazy, the easy way out, right? I don't have to do anything, that's like the easiest way out. Somebody in the mode of passion is constantly thinking about doing something. I really need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do that. I just go from one thing to the other thing. But somebody in the mode of goodness is thinking about the future. They're preparing to be stable and stationary today, doing activity, but in a way that is beneficial for the future. Thinking about, okay, this is necessary today, but how necessary is it? Let me focus on something which is beneficial for all of time to come. And then Krishna goes on to describe different things like the constituents of action, knowledge, reaction, happiness, according to the modes, and various different things. And then eventually in verse 50 of this chapter, it starts going on to describe different stages of self-realization. Right? So we've got something which is higher than liberation, because it's a stage of self-realization. And Krishna shares with us a summary of how great souls act, how those who are self-realized, how they act. What's their behavior, what's their activities like, what's their thought process like, what vision do they have of everyone else. Krishna is sharing all these in his summary. And he specifically emphasizes that all these characteristics, all these traits, all these behaviors are there because of their pure devotional service. That's their pure consciousness of serving Krishna. And it's that drives all of their other activities, that drives their vision to see all beings, whether they're human, whether they're man, woman, animals, birds, plants, ants, all with the same vision, because they're all parts and parcels of Krishna. And then in yesterday's verse, I'll just read it out actually. So, under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction, but compelled by the work born of your own nature, you will act all the same, O son of Kunti. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that, as Prabhupada was mentioning, he was perplexed. He didn't want to fight his own cousins, right? Who of us would put our hand up and say, we want to, okay, we've got quite a few men here, so, we'd probably love to fight our brothers, but not to the extent that would kill them, right? We'd just get in an argument and maybe a bit of a fist fight if we're males, Females also sometimes, but I think men have a tendency to want to get engaged in fighting. But we wouldn't kill them. But here, as Prabhupada was mentioning, that was the perplexity, that was what Arjuna was thinking about. Like, I don't want to do this. I might as well just go to the forest, just run away. I don't want to fight them. Why should I fight them? For a piece of land? Would I value a piece of land over my relationship with my cousins?
He didn't believe in Hinsa. He was more believing for the Ahimsa. That is what he was.
Yeah, he was a firm believer of Ahimsa. Ahimsa is non-violence, right? But he was also a Kshatriya, right? He's fought many wars. He's fought many battles, he's killed many people. But when it came to his brothers, his cousins, he took that stance. He hesitated, exactly. But what Krishna was sharing with Arjuna in yesterday's verse is that even though out of your illusion, you don't want to fight, But what Krishna is saying is that because of your nature as a Kshatriya, you'll be compelled to fight anyway. We see it within us. When we have a specific type of fire within us, a specific passion, we might try and avoid it as much as we can, but in the end, we just go back to it. We go back to that same passionate mode because that's our nature. If somebody is naturally caring for somebody, right, a parent, a child, or anything, a mother-child is very common here, right?
But Krishna told him there is no choice for you, Arjun. You have to fight,
Mm.
whether your brother or not.
Exactly.
So he said
Yeah, in the last verse, he's saying he has to fight.
he has to fight.
And in this verse, what Krishna is telling Arjun that actually there's a Supreme Lord, there's a super soul within you that's directing you, that's guiding you through life. Just as, he's present in the hearts and the living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. So Krishna is telling Arjun that, look, within the heart, within the region of the heart, you've got a super soul. You've got the Lord present there, and he's guiding you. Who are you? A soul next to the super soul. And he's directing us. He's directing us with this machine that we've got, the body as a machine. Krishna is describing the body as a machine to be utilized, and he's directing us through that. So specifically here, it's talking about the Supreme Lord as a super soul. And the super soul is one aspect of God realization. So there are 3 stages. We won't get into them, but just so that we have awareness here, we'll just mention them. So the first stage is called the Brahman stage. The Brahman is a impersonal sort of form whereby, okay, we're all one. There's energy and we're all one. But when you go past that Brahman stage, when we start, we recognize that there's a higher energy. But when we start focusing on that energy, we see that, hang on a second, that energy, that light is coming from a localized place. Just as if we think about the light in this room, we look around us and we see that there's light in the room. But when we focus on trying to find the source of the light, we see that, okay, it's coming from somewhere over here, right? Coming from this chandelier, that chandelier. And that aspect is called the Paramatma, or the super soul, which is the localized aspect. But then when we focus even more, then we realize that, okay, it's not the chandelier. There's actually a figment inside the light bulb, right? There's a specific part inside the light bulb that's giving out this energy. And that's the Bhagwan feature. That's the Krishna element, right? That's the all-encompassing aspect of these 3 stages. So in this verse specifically, Krishna is describing that the super soul, that Paramatma aspect, that localized aspect, is within the region of the heart. Elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto mattas mitirgyanam apohanamcha. That's to say that the super soul is within the heart. He's in the region of the heart. And he specifically gives 3 things. So let's see if anybody knows the Sanskrit. So, mattas mitirgyanam apohanamcha. So there's 3 aspects there. There's smritir. Does anybody know what smritir means? Smritir. Remembrance, yes. Okay, so he gives remembrance. Then there's jnanam, knowledge. And what's the third one? Forgetfulness. And we know the Sanskrit? Apohanamcha. Mata smritir jnanam apohanamcha. So within the region of the heart as the super soul, Krishna is giving us these 3 things: remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Right? So if we see anything in our life, if we look at any aspect that we do, there's always something that we have to remember. There's always something that we have to know. There's always something that we're inclined to do also, right? Knowledge, forgetfulness, and remembrance, all 3 are required for anything that we do in life. If we aren't sitting in this class today, if we're sitting in this class today and we're remembering that, we have to do this activity, that activity, that activity, then in order to then do those later on, we'd have to remember them at some point. But the alternative is that we could be present in the class today and think, okay, I'm in the class today, let me get the maximum out of the class. Let me listen to the class, let me absorb what what the speaker is saying. So he's in the heart, and Krishna as a super soul knows also our past, present, and future. Right? That's one of the aspects of Bhagwan, right? He would have to know everything. In order to be classified as God, he'd have to have all the knowledge, he'd have to have all the remembrance. So Krishna as God, he knows our past, our present, our future. He knows our desires. He knows what we want to do. He knows our activities. Even before we do them, he knows what we're going to do. Good, bad, it doesn't matter. He knows them. And most of us didn't come into this world with the desire to do what Krishna wanted. Right? When we go home today, or as soon as we leave the temple today, we're not thinking, oh, what does Krishna want me to do now? We're thinking, what do I want to do? Right? We have our own desires. And here Krishna's again going back and saying that, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities. Krishna, as the super soul, is giving us the direction to be able to do and carry out our desires. So if we want to be rich in the world, right? Put your hand up if you want to be rich, if that's something that you want. You want a lot of money. Do you want? No, nobody? Nobody wants to be rich? Okay. You want to be rich? Okay. What certain desire? Yes.
Depends on rich, financially rich. Is that?
You can define what rich means for you. You.
I want to be rich in the knowledge or spiritual knowledge.
Okay, so you want spiritual knowledge. That's your desire. That's nice. That's nice. So some of us will want to be rich. Some of us will want to have a really good family. Some of us would want really good education, depending on our age. Some of us might want to be doctors. We may know family, friends who want to be really good doctors. And, let's be honest, some people want to be criminals. They want to go and do bad things in the world. They have that desire. And Krishna is saying here that he's directing them according to what their desire is. So if you want to be a doctor, Krishna is giving you the knowledge, the help and support to help you be a doctor. If you want to be rich, Krishna is giving the knowledge, the support to help you be rich. But equally, if you want to be a criminal, Krishna is giving you the knowledge, the help, the support to be a criminal. Hang on a second. Elsewhere in the Gita, Krishna also says, Pita ham asya jagato mata dhata pitamaha. He's describing himself as the Supreme Father, as the Supreme Mother, as the support, as the grandfather. Now, do we have parents in the room apart from Mataji here? Any other parents? So if I were to ask you, if your child wanted to be a criminal, would you support them to be a criminal? No. No. So how is Krishna the father, the mother, the grandfather, and supporting his children to be criminals? It doesn't make sense, right? Krishna doesn't want us to do the bad things. He doesn't want us to do anything which takes us away from him. Just as a mother, you would want to make sure that the child is safe, the child is doing right things, and is with you at every step of the way. But we can see that, let's say a child is leaning towards doing something which is bad, something not good for them. Then as the mother, as the father, what will you do? You'll tell them, no, don't do this, it's bad for you. You say it once, twice, thrice. And the child might listen, if they're good, then they listen. Okay, my parents saying this isn't good for me, I won't do it, I won't go near the fire, whatever it is. But do the children always listen? No. Sometimes they're stubborn. Even as adults we can be stubborn, let alone children, And if the child is stubborn and the child really wants to do something, they'll do whatever it takes to do it, right? Like, for example, I have my nephew around because my mum's looking after my nephew when my sister goes to work. And he loves just going to the dining table, and on the dining table we have tulsi ma and all these other different things on the dining table during the day. He loves just taking them off and just dropping them on the floor. You know? So my mum's like, no, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. But what does he do? When mum's not looking, just find his way to the dining table and just drop everything. So sometimes, even as the parents, you have to just let the child do what they want because they're being stubborn about doing it. And it's not that you just go, okay, you've done it, now you deal with it. Krishna is seated as the Supersoul in the heart. Wherever you go, whatever you do, the Supersoul is with you, not doing it, but he's still with you. Just as the parents will still be with the child, that, okay, you've just done this, okay, make sure you're not hurt, looking after them, caring for them, supporting them. So, really when we think about it, yes, the Supersoul is fulfilling our desires, just as the parents will fulfill the needs of the child. And as a result, sometimes, yes, the child will do the bad things. But it's not that the parents want the child to do the bad things. They're always there waiting and ready and help the child. When they're doing something wrong, they'll help them. Okay, just come back, right? Just turn back to me and look at me. It's described in the Vedas, actually, that the Supersoul can be described, there's two aspects, right? Within the region of the heart, it's described that it's like two birds on a tree. There's the soul, which is one bird, and that soul is eating the fruits of the tree. Sometimes the fruit is bitter, sometimes it's sour, sometimes it's sweet, sometimes it's tasteless, right? And the other bird is just sitting there, just looking and witnessing what the other bird is doing. So this analogy applies to us as the soul and the Supersoul, where we are described as the birds who are just constantly going from one fruit to another. We're trying this activity here. It's very tasty, we're enjoying it for some time. But then after a while, okay, it's tasteless, we're not finding any taste in it. So we go and move on to a different activity. And then another, and then a third, and then fourth. Sometimes we do something which is like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing I've ever done in my life. How could I do that? Like, why did I do that? And that's your bitter fruit. Sometimes you get the sour fruit, that you do something and you're intending it to be really good, but then it just works out that nothing worked out in the end. It all just went pear-shaped. And sometimes you just did the best thing ever. Everybody's praising you. You yourself are feeling really good that, yes, I really did this one activity really nicely. Everybody's praising it. Everybody's liking it. It's changing the world. And then there's the Supersoul, who's just seeing us do all of that. But what the Supersoul is looking at is that we're engaging in all these activities, not realizing that at some point the fruits will not be good for us. At some point that tree will run out of fruits that we desire, and all that's going to be left are the sour and bitter fruits. Or, naturally speaking, if we don't even know which are the good fruits, then sometimes we'll be screwing our face, sometimes we'll be crying, sometimes we'll be angry, sometimes we'll be happy. But we keep going around that cycle again and again because we just keep trying to taste all these different fruits on the tree. But the Supersoul, as that bird, what he's trying to do is he's waiting for us to go, just turn to him and look at him and go like, okay, I'm trying all these fruits out. Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm sad, sometimes I'm angry, but like, how can I always be happy? I don't want to be sad, I don't want to be angry, I don't want to be distressed. I just want to be happy, right? And the Supersoul acts as a director to help us fulfill our desires. If we want to eat that fruit, Krishna as a Supersoul will guide us to eat that fruit. But if we look at Krishna and go, Krishna, you know what? I know I get a bit of happiness from that 64-inch TV. I know I get a bit of happiness from that Mercedes-Benz. I know I get a bit of happiness from that car, from that house, from the £1 million bank balance that I have, from the 20 different familial relationships I have, from the 50 friendship groups that I have, from the 100 friends that I have on Facebook and the 1,000 likes that I get on my photos. when we go to Krishna and go, you know what? I get a bit of happiness, but actually, really and truly, it's not really happiness at all, because all it's doing is, why didn't I get 1,001 likes? Why did I get the Mercedes-Benz of 2022 and not 2023? Why did I get a house that's £500,000, that's 3 bedrooms, but then the house on the road next door is 501,000, but it's 4 bedrooms? We find happiness in that small moment, but in the very next moment, we're seeing all these other things that are like, hang on, I could have got something better. Or I want something better. That anxiety is always going to be there. But when we turn to Krishna and go, actually, I realize that this world is just dukhalayam shashvatam. This world is just set out to always give us misery. Even 5 seconds of happiness will turn into a lifetime of misery. When we turn to him and realize and recognize and turn to him and go like, help, like what do I do to get out of just pecking at those fruits on the tree? That's when Krishna doesn't just act as a director, he starts acting as a redirector. He redirects us in a way that he shows us the path to real happiness. He shows us the path to the scriptures which reveal that happiness. And when we actually see and when we start practicing some sort of spiritual path, we can actually see, I know we have a few very sincere practicing devotees among us who are practicing spirituality with sincerity, and they can probably attest to this, that as part of devotional life, we do a couple of activities, yoga activities like chanting, listening to classes, reading, kirtan, etc. And sometimes, especially during japa, at least for me, it's like, okay, like I'm just waiting for japa to finish so I can do something else. And especially in the initial stages, we'll think, you know, there's a new movie out, let me just go watch the movie, you know? Let me just go to the cinema. I really like that actor or actress, I just want to watch that movie, you know? So you'll do that, you know, especially in the initial days, you'll do that, you'll go to the cinema. But then what happens? You see a car chase scene, and you start going, in your mind you're thinking, you show them as running after Krishna, you know? Or you see, I don't know, or you come across a scene where it's a song, a love song, and you start playing that song in your separation to Krishna, where, oh my gosh, you know, I just left the temple, and I'm just missing the Lord, I'm just missing the deities. You know, all these different things come up when you start seeing how there's an issue with the relationships going on in the movie. Then you just start thinking, oh yeah, you know, Krishna describes this world is just full of misery. You know, he's the ultimate place that we get happiness. You know, all these things we start thinking about when we start turning away from Krishna. So on the one side, we can enjoy the material world, you know, and go, okay, let me try this fruit here. It turns out sweet. That's amazing, you know, that's great. Let me try another fruit now, and now it's sour, and now it's bitter. And we can go through that cycle. Or we can go to Krishna and say, I'm not going to ask for a TV. I'm not going to ask for a house. I'm not going to ask for my children's education. What I'm going to ask for is, what do you want to give me for my happiness? After all, Krishna, you're the Almighty. You know everything. You know what is best for me also. So then we can let Krishna direct us and guide our life so that we can always be happy. In this verse also it's described, specifically in English, it's the wanderings of all living entities, right? When we think of wanderings, we can think of some sort of travel or journey, right? But it's interesting that the specific word used here is wandering. And when we break down this idea of movement, there's two different types of movement. There's directed, right? We've got a specific goal in mind. I'm leaving place A to go to place B. I'm going to travel there. I'm going to go on that journey. But But then there's the other, which is aimless, right? I don't know where I'm going, but I'm just going to go somewhere. And we call that wandering, right? We're wandering around, right? When we're on a phone call, we might be saying, oh yeah, I'm just wandering around the park or something like that. We have no place to actually go in the park. We're just going around the park, going wherever. So it's interesting that here Krishna is describing the movement of us as wandering, right? We're just moving around aimlessly, because actually when we think about it, we don't have an aim in life, a real aim for ourselves. We might think that, okay, as young adults, we have an aim to complete our education, get a first in our degree, and then progress our career really well. We're thinking, okay, I'll be one of the best cardiologists there is. Or, you know what really brings happiness in the world is having lots of money. So I'll build a 50-house portfolio because I don't want to work for my money. I'll just buy one house, let it pay for 50 other houses, right? Big bank balance. Or we might think that we want to have a really nice, close, intimate family, right? Stay with my parents, stay with children, keep us all together, hum saath saath hai sort of type. You know, we're all in it together, just stay together, good or bad, we all just go out together. But when we think about these, when we look inside us a bit more, then what is all this? What is the desire behind all this, right? How is it actually coming from? Where is it coming from? And we see that actually it's coming from our desire to do 4 specific things. 4 specific things of mating, right? Having that family, having that relationship, defending, right? Does anybody know the other 2? Sleeping and eating, right? So 4 things: sleeping, eating, mating, and defending. Now, hang on a second, like, I don't just want those 4 things, but let's just think about it a second. Why do we want a house, right? Because we want a place. We want a place which we call our own. We want a place to protect. We want our own zone, right? But animals also do the same thing. If you enter a chimpanzee's territory that they've marked, they'll pounce on you. They'll literally consider you a threat, and they go like, you're in my house, right? What happens when somebody who we haven't invited home comes home? We're like, you're in my property, like, get out of my property. In America, they'd get guns out. They'd be like, you're trespassing. Exactly the same thing. Okay, sleeping. So we look at a lion and they're sleeping on a rock, and we're going, you're the king of the jungle and you're sleeping on a rock. And then for us, we're thinking, I've got my king-size bed, 1,000 spring mattress, right? I'm going to get money so that I can have a nice place to sleep. But we're still doing the same thing. We're still sleeping. Eating food. We look at the dogs. We look at our pets. We go, here's a bone, you know? And they'll eat the bone. Here's a piece of meat. They'll eat the meat. And what do? We go, you know, that's uncivilized. I've got my nice dining table from, I don't know, from Italy or somewhere fancy like that. I've got a nice plate, 5 different types of forks and knives, cooked meal, a chef, you know, 5-star hotels down the road. Still eating. That's where we've invested our money also. Eating, sleeping, and mating, right? Mating is, again, we can go back to the house example. We look at the dogs, the cats on the streets, and like just mating out in open. But we'll go, no, that's uncivilized. I want a house that we can have our family in closed doors, in protected doors, you know, protected from the weather. But we're doing the same thing. So why do we want to be a cardiologist? Why want to be a big cardiologist? Because we want the name, fame, the glory, the money, to just do all these things. Instead of just having our territory be the house, we want our territory to be the society. Yes, you know, we walk down the street. Oh, there's Mr. So-and-so, doctor, you know, he's such a great doctor. Or we go on a plane and we want people to recognize us, you know, oh, you know, that's a great celebrity, you know, can you sign my autograph for me? Right? All we want is just a glorified way to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. But should that be the goal of life? Is that what we want? Just a glorified way to be an animal? I mean, as Krishna is saying, if that's what our desire is, then Krishna will give us that desire. He'll help us reach it. But those who are introspective, those who are self-realized, the saints that we have, like Srila Prabhupada, like the Acharyas, and like even many living today, the many Maharajas, the senior devotees, they've gone to Krishna and they've gone, Krishna, I don't know what's good for me, right? I think I need a big mansion to live in. I think I need a first in my degree. I think I need £1 million in my bank balance. And when we get it, it's not that we're happy. We still have other anxieties. And that in itself introduces its own anxieties. Has anybody bought a brand new car ever in your life? Brand new car, no? Okay, let's see one person. You buy a brand new car, you're like, amazing, you know, I bought a brand new car. Every other hour, you'll be looking out the window going, oh, let me just check, you know, is the car safe? Is anything wrong? Has anybody scratched it? You buy a car because you want to look good, you want it to be flashy, and you're like, yes, I've got my car now, no more anxiety. And yet every other hour, you've got an anxiety to go like, let me just make sure the car is safe. Or the house, you know, like you buy a house and it's like, let me just check, nothing's wrong with the house. Oh, one thing's leaking. Oh no, you know, like breakdown, meltdown. So you buy a house because you want to feel protected, feel safe, and yet the house itself brings you so many anxieties. But if that's our desire, Krishna will give it to us. He might even warn us beforehand that, hey, you know, like you're going to do this, but think about all this stuff that's coming to you with it. Do you really want it? But we'll turn a blind eye to it. Instead, if we go to Krishna and say, I don't know what's good for me. I think this house is good for me. I think this car is good for me. I think this relationship is good for me. But you tell me, you're the one that knows everything. You tell me what's good for me. And you direct my life in that way. So that's when Krishna actively gets involved. That's when we turn to Krishna, that's when Krishna will go, okay, he's turning to me now. I will guide him back to me. I will guide him to a place which is described as a Vaikunta. Vaikunta means that place without any anxiety, right? So there you can have your car and you won't ever have to worry about it being scratched because there the car always stays perfect. You can have that place, you can go to that house, that family, where you'll never have to worry about them having a disease, them having health issues, them passing away, arguments, none of that. You can go to a place where you can engage in all of these activities without any anxiety. But that's if we go to Krishna and go, I don't know what's good for me, you tell me what's good for me. And when we look at the lives of our self-realized personnel, the acharyas, the gurus, the self-realized devotees, then they all guide us back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his mission. They all guide us to the process that he's given. And the most simplest one is to chant the glories of the whole name, Harinam, Harinam, Harinam eva kevalam, which is to always chant the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. When we're constantly in connection with the holy names are described to be non-different to Krishna. What that means is that just as Krishna is all pure, the names are all pure. And so if we associate with something which is all pure, naturally we'll get purified. Right? But I'll be honest, I find it difficult to always chant. I can't just sit and chant 24/7 on my beads or in my tongue. I have to engage myself in other ways. So even for that, our self-realized acharyas have given us a process. And Srila Prabhupada simplified it very nicely for us. He's given us 5 things, right? It's described as the A, B, C, D, E method. A is association. Associate with like-minded devotees, those devotees who want to engage and enhance their own spiritual practices, go deeper, become self-realized themselves. B is for books. For example, we've got Bhagavad Gita here, right? This Bhagavad Gita as it is quite special because many of the Bhagavad Gitas just give us either the Sanskrit or just give us the English translation. But the Bhagavad Gita as it is gives us the commentary of those self-realized souls who have lived and breathed the Bhagavad Gita, right? So we get an insight into what is it that they're reading in this verse, like the verse we've just read. Like, I wouldn't be able to decipher what the verse means. I would just read it as going, okay, the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. Okay, so the Lord is here somewhere. Oh, Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities. Okay, so he's just giving us a path of some sort. Who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. Machine, material energy, what does that even mean? I have no idea. But the acharyas help explain to us what this means. The body is like a machine. We are not the body, we're a soul. How we utilize a machine, how we utilize our gadgets, determines how useful the gadget is and whether the gadget is taking us in a positive way or a negative way. We could take the car to the temple, or we could take the car to a pub. The machine itself isn't good or bad, but it's how we utilize it. But Krishna is guiding us, right? All these things that acharyas explain. So A was for? Association. B was for? Books. C is for chanting, right? We just shared the Mahamantra. So we can chant, You could get beads from the manor. I don't know if the reception's still open. You could purchase beads, or you might have beads at home. And just 5-10 minutes a day, just start. Just do something. Chant on the Mahamantra. Each bead, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then move on to the next bead. 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes a day, We don't even have to take so much time out. Just start with 10-15 minutes a day. D is for everybody's favorite, diet. Not going on a diet and, like slim fit sort of diet. But it's a diet where you're actually engaging the act of eating, but not just eating any old food, but eating food that has been offered to the Lord. Again, when we offer something to the Lord, it becomes prasadam. And prasadam means that it's been sanctified by the Lord, it's been purified by the Lord. Just as the holy name is non-different to Krishna, prasadam is also non-different to Krishna. So again, if we associate with prasadam, instead of eating, we might go down to our local Sainsbury's, Tesco's and buy a packet of crisps. But what we could do is, instead of just eating those crisps, we could just offer them. Come home, have our altar, go give the packet of crisps to Krishna and go, you eat it first, and then I'll eat it, right? You purify the food, and then I can have your remnants. I can get purified by the process of eating. And E is for engagement. So many devotees you see if you come out throughout the days, like Prabhu was here earlier, looking after the queuing system, right? So many around the temple, even from home, you could do so many services. There are many different arcs of devotional service. There are many different arcs of the manor, many different departments that you could get involved with. If you like to come to the temple every weekend, you could come and do some Goshala service, serving the cows. You could do some car park service, serving all those who come to the temple, greeting them, helping direct their car. Or if you don't have time to come regularly to the temple, you could serve from home. We've got things like the School of Bhakti and education front. We have a Maharaj who resides at the manor who's starting an initiative called Think Gita, where he's got a retreat in a couple of weeks' time. We could get involved with these courses or these retreats and everything like that. So if we want to go to Krishna and ask for this TV, this house, this education, this first-class degree, the car, by all means we can do that. And Krishna, as he's saying here, he's directing the wandering of all living entities. He'll help us achieve them. He won't give them to us necessarily, but he'll help us achieve them. He'll give us the direction, the knowledge to get there. But if we remember that example of the two birds in a tree, he might give that fruit to us, but he's not guaranteeing that that fruit will always be sweet. So it's up to us to decide if we want to go to Krishna and go, give me that fruit. And in that case, we have to suffer the consequences of whether it's bitter, sour, sweet. Or we can go to Krishna and go, I don't know which of these fruits are sweet. I don't even know if this tree is got even one good fruit. But you tell me, you guide me, you direct me, you do whatever you want and give me your association, Krishna, your devotees in my life, your books in my life, your holy name in my life, your prasadam in my life, your service in my life, so that you can then give me the fruits that are best for me. So in that way then, we can connect with the Paramatma, the super soul in the heart, because instead of going to the super soul with our desires, we're going to the super soul with the super soul's desires, Krishna's desires. So then there, conscious of time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we do have 5 minutes until the curtains open. We do usually have comments, questions, chastisements at the end of class, if anybody has any. I think he's just going to mic. Thank you, Prabhu. Any questions, comments?
With respect,
Yes.
when you talk about with respect, when you're talking about I, we, and us, what about them, you, and there? You know, because what he allows us to do, if we've got wrongness in our desire, is affecting other people's lives and taking from them their choices. And so why isn't he protecting their interests against us doing that?
So if I just understood the question correctly, please do clarify if I've misunderstood. Are you referring to the fact that I'm talking about my desires as my desires, whereas it could impact you or my friends, my family, and what about them?
No, I'm talking generally in people's desires, of how it affects other people adversely. If you wish to become a criminal, and Krishna allows you to do that, what about the innocent that are suffering from that, and not given the choice to pursue their desires as they could?
It's a very nice question. So the question is in relation to how, if we were to desire something bad, then that would obviously impact somebody else's lives and their ability to choose and do something. So it's described that actually there's two aspects to fulfillment of those desires. There's the desire itself, but then there's also the karma associated. So karma is, in one sense, is the activity that we perform, but in another sense is also we could describe it as the credit that we accrue from doing certain activities. So for example, if I were to, say I have my water bottle, say somebody was thirsty. If I were to give them my water bottle because they don't have water, then I'm accruing the karma, the credit, which is very nice and pious. Yes. Yep. So yes, so that's where I'm coming to, right? So that's one example of karma, but equally, the other person has to have the karma to have that thirst be quenched, maybe as part of their life, somebody else was in that situation where they were thirsty and this person was able to give their water, but they didn't. So the karma is that reaction of the fact that they've performed an activity and they might not get the reaction straight away, but at some point in the future, they will get the reaction to say, you've done this activity before, therefore, that comes back to you today. Now, this aspect of karma is actually quite involved, it's quite complex, but it's a very simple way to describe that idea of karma, whereby there's two folds. One is the desire and one is the karma itself. So yes, agreed. What we do affects other people, good or bad, pious or impious. But equally, those who are affected by them also have their own karma that allows them to be affected or not. For example, there are many cases where there'll be a plane crash, but there will be one or two survivors on that plane crash, whilst everybody else is injured and many would have died. So why is it that those specific people didn't die? It's because of the karma that they have. Those who were meant to die died because that was their karma. Whereas those who were meant to survive, they just were meant to experience something. They had the karma of experiencing. Yeah, so I'm just conscious that the curtains are open. Happy to discuss that afterwards. Hare Krishna.
Kiva Jayo Jaya Gora Chande Arati Kasho Kiva Jayo Jaya Gora Chande Arati Kasho Ratna Simhasa Sampa Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. श्री श्री राधा गोकुलानंद की सीताराम लक्ष्मण हनुमान की गौर निताई की जय। So if everyone could just remain seated down so we can do Nrsimhadev prayers.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Radhe Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol. Nrsimhadev Bhagavan ki, Prahlad Maharaj ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitya Gaur Pramanande.